Hey everybody, I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast where we've been inching our way through the book of Matthew a little bit every weekday morning. Right now, we are on the seam between Matthew chapter 18 and Matthew chapter 19. And that seam has us looking backwards at the fourth of the 5 great big speeches around which the book of Matthew is structured. This is the community life discourse. This is the one that's in-house business more than all of the other speeches. This one is about, if you're already in, you're going to follow Jesus. Here's how to treat people on the front end. Here's how to treat each other when you're in this community of faith, this new family of faith, and something goes wrong. And here's what your attitude should be regarding forgiveness all the time. And so it's a drilling down even further that we get in Matthew chapter 18 into the values of the kingdom that were first introduced to us in the Sermon on the Mount. It's a drilling down into what those values look like in a very specific way when they're played out amongst flawed humans whose destinies have been changed, whose natures have been changed, but who still exist in a world that's broken and flawed, with bodies and brains that are broken and flawed and characters that are broken and flawed. It's this, what does it look like to live with a foot in each world kind of speech? And understandably, it gets into some pretty gritty, pretty practical stuff because it's meant to deal with the difficult rub between these two worlds that the kingdom citizen, in a sense, lives in. But on the other side of chapter 18, as we get into chapter 19, we see that it's working. I mean, whatever it is that Jesus is articulating, even if some of these details about how things might get sideways and how to work things out when you have disagreement or even sin or problems in church, and even the mandatory nature of forgiveness, that you don't get to debate whether you forgive someone in the kingdom. Your switch is always set to always forgive every time, stubbornly and insistently. All of this messaging, all of this vision that Jesus is casting for what it looks like to be in this kingdom and what his kingdom is all about, like it is working. It is scratching the itch. Whatever's wrong with people in the first century in Jesus' neck of the woods, this is speaking to them. This addresses those deeply felt issues that everybody was experiencing. And so we flip it over to Matthew 19, and maybe some of us are reading through this. We're like, man, Matthew 18, those were tough teachings from Jesus. There are like 2 brutal warnings in there about like millstones and being thrown into a torture prison if you don't forgive other people's debts when you've been forgiven a whole bunch of debts. Like, scary stuff. You'd think that would run people off, but here's what we get in Matthew 19:1. When Jesus had finished saying these things, he left Galilee and he went to the region of Judea, to the other side of the Jordan. Large crowds followed him, and he healed them there. Okay, well, first of all, there's some geographic significance here. The going to the other side of the Jordan into the region of Judea, this is a different municipality. This is a different client king state that is owned by Rome, but governed in conjunction between a Roman governor. At this time, we would be to Pontius Pilate by now. Pilate would have been pretty new on the scene at this point, but he's the new guy in town governing Judea. And then you've got members of the Herod family who've taken turns being the local client king, the indigenous king, or in this case, they called it an ethnarch in Judea. So we're into a new political climate, a new political situation. We've crossed some state lines here, and it's going to be a little bit different than what we've been dealing with in Galilee or that little bit of time that we spent way up north in another jurisdiction. Whatever the case, Judea is the big dog. This is the really important one for this story. This is the one that would have popped for all of the people as being the place where the things happen. You're not out in the sticks anymore. This is where the big leagues are. So it would be the equivalent of like going to New York, but not New York City. This would be like Buffalo or the Finger Lakes. I mean, you're in New York, but you're not to the seat of power yet. Still, the original audience would have noted you've got 2 very differing takes on things in Jesus, who is associated with Galilee, and the religious leaders who are associated with Jerusalem. And now we're in the same state, and we're on a collision course, and we're getting closer together. This is going to get ugly. And surely, as they were reading this document, they all knew how it ended. They knew that Jesus got crucified, that there were rumors that he had been raised from the dead. So they know where it's headed, but they would have felt that tension building here anyway. But significant for our purposes here today is this verse 2, that the large crowds followed him, and he healed them there. So his powers don't just work in Galilee. Apparently, they also work in the state of New York. They work where the important people are. This isn't just some fringe, well, yeah, all the stories about magical, impressive things happen somewhere far away in a distant corner of the world where nobody's ever there to see it. How come none of that stuff ever happens on Broadway? Well, we're moving in the direction of Broadway, and as these crowds follow him, they're overcoming two sets of barriers without any hesitation. Barrier number one that these crowds are overcoming is the political one that we just discussed. They don't care that we're moving into a new jurisdiction. They're not troubled by Jesus being a Galilee phenomenon exclusively. They're cool with this transcending lines. Second, though, these crowds are crossing the metaphorical boundary of the difficulty of Jesus' teaching. They're not scared off by this stuff. He's saying these tough things, and they keep following him anyway. Did you ever have somebody that you were maybe dating or in a friendship with, and you were like, I don't know where this is going, and I kind of want to feel it out. I'm just going to turn over some of my cards about, like, hey, here's what I'm hoping for, or hey, here's who I really am, or hey, here's where I think my life is going next. And if it freaks them out and they walk, that was probably better for everybody. But if they're like, cool, yeah, I get what you're doing and I care about you, then wow, maybe you got a great and loyal friend for life. Or if it's somebody you're dating, maybe like, well, maybe this is the one. It's kind of that, to pick the tamer of the two metaphors, fish or cut bait kind of moment. So Jesus ups the stakes, ups the intensity, and all it does is ratchet up this loyal following that he has and cause them to be even more invested, even more persuaded. And then what does he do with these people? Jesus is on his way into Judea. He's heading to Jerusalem. He's going to go ahead and go there to be crucified and killed. He said so like 5 times already. He knows what he's doing. And along the way to his death that he's marching to, a bunch of people are coming up and they're like, I have arthritis. And a normal person would be like, arthritis? Oh, no, that must be so hard for you. I'm actually on my way to have a bunch of railroad spikes driven through my appendages and to get stapled to a big wooden tree and hung up for people to see right after I get flogged and stuff. And then I'm going to bleed out and asphyxiated and get stabbed with a spear and thrown in some sort of airtight tomb where I would suffocate even if I were still alive. But tell me more about your arthritis. But Jesus is like, wow, arthritis, but come on over here. And he's healing everybody anyway. This ongoing theme in Matthew cannot be overlooked, that Jesus consistently chooses compassion. Or maybe it'd be better said, he can't help but be compassionate. This is who he is. This is what he's here for. He did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. This is exactly what he's doing on his way to give his life as a ransom for many. He is serving people along the way, healing them. One, to just, I think, be cool in the moment because he loves them and has compassion on them. But two, to illustrate that he is this healer, that if he can heal that arthritis or that bum knee, he can heal sin, he can heal death, he can heal the human problem. But I think despite the intensity of the message, the reality is this is appealing. Because yeah, it seems really rigorous, and I get that, but also it's rigorous forgiveness. This is the thing that fixes what ails us. We were talking about Community yesterday, the NBC sitcom. One of the big themes of the show is that you've got this ensemble cast of tremendously flawed characters. They're all narcissists. They're jerks. One of them is almost a straight-up villain. They're not great people, but they're friends, and the idea is that they form this new family of community college students, and they go through thick and thin together, and they wrong each other in every episode in profound ways. And at the end of every one, it's like, it doesn't matter how awful they were, there's always forgiveness. But what's the appeal of Community? Well, in addition to being funny and well-acted and well-written and all of that stuff, it's also appealing because these people just keep forgiving each other relentlessly, stubbornly. It's ridiculous. None of them deserve the forgiveness. Some stupid, quaint little speech that one character or another gives at the end, it doesn't fix anything. And everybody knows it doesn't fix anything, but they just keep forgiving each other anyway. And it's beautiful, and it wears you down. And you watch that and you're like, I want to be a part of that new family of community college students. I want to be in a circle of people like that, where there's unending forgiveness and patience, but also like we kind of sharpen each other and we call each other on our stuff when we need to. It was beautiful, if also incredibly clumsy and occasionally damaging to each other and people around them. Well, I think that new family of faith that Jesus is putting together with these ground rules of forgiveness, like we're going to forgive, we're going to do so stubbornly, that forgiveness is going to happen automatically every time. And if somebody's even remotely open to restoration and getting things squared away and figured out, like we're going to put it back together and we're going to move forward and it's going to be great. People see that It doesn't look like the ground rules of society and the ground rules of religion that they deal with in their day. And guess which one is more beautiful? The one with forgiveness, the one with the community, the one where the mechanism is grace instead of the mechanism being constant judgment and trying to win the approval of people in a system you will never ultimately impress and you will never feel satisfaction or security with, because the ground rules are entirely merit-based. This new family of faith, the ground rules are based on the merit of the king, the founder of the new family of faith. But your acceptance into this family of faith, it isn't based on your ability to be awesome and impeccable and have everybody be permanently impressed with you and never screw anything up. It's based on the forgiveness of the king to accept you into this new family of faith in the first place. And then this forgiveness is something that you're going to need again and again, even while you're in the new family of faith. That, my friends, is sustainable and beautiful. And in the same way, it's attractive in a subtle way on a TV show that I just got done watching and had fun with. It is even more attractive and beautiful when it happens in real life. And I think that is why these crowds did not care if Jesus was in Galilee or Syria or where he was. And they did not care if this seemed rigorous and difficult. They like the values of this new family of faith. They like the values of this kingdom. And they can picture what a standing in a relationship would look like that is predicated on forgiveness as opposed to merit. And so they kept following him no matter where he went, and we're going to keep following along with the story next time around as we roll into verse 3 and an incredibly tricky teaching that I think will be fun for us to unpack together. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.